Have you ever cried when you're praying? Have you ever cried when you're making dua? Have you ever cried when you're talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If not, you're missing out on a beautiful feeling called al-inkisaru lillah, humbling yourself to Allah and crying out of love and respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As we navigate through the heart and the acts of worship that we can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our hearts, we reach one of the beautiful ibadat that very few people are aware of it. Maybe they felt it once, but they did not know exactly what it was. This ibadah is called al-inkisar lillah, which means you are conquering your ego. You're humbling yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're getting rid of your pride when you are dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, normally, we as humans, we don't like to be humiliated. If someone humiliates me, I'll respond, I'll stop them. But when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I need to turn that switch off and have no pride whatsoever when I'm talking to my Lord, when I'm talking to my Creator. When I raise my hand and I ask Him for things, I'm admitting, I'm confessing, I'm acknowledging that I need Him. That is al-inkisar. That is humbling yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the beautiful outcome of that feeling or that ibadah is a tear that comes from your eyes, on your cheeks. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, two kinds of eyes will never be harmed by the fire on the day of judgment. One of them is the eye that tears up, that cries out of the love and respect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, 7 kinds of people will be protected under the throne of Allah on the day of judgment. One of them is a person who cried out of the love and fear and respect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you ever cried in Taraweeh, if you ever cried in Laylatul Qadr, if you ever cried when you're making dua, I tell you congratulations, you just received a special invitation to be in a special place when very few people will be allowed to be there. But for those who never felt it before, work on it. Work on your heart. Work on breaking that pride and conquering that ego when you are dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you cannot get there, let me share with you some of the things you can do to acquire that feeling. In order to humble yourself to Allah, always think of His greatness. As we said before, the more you know Allah, the more you love Him, the more you respect Him, but also the more you'll be humble. When you know who is Al-Azim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the magnificence, Al-Azim, the magnificent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so powerful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has so much abilities. He's the creator of this world that we're living in. We are so small dot in this universe that we're in. So when I stand to pray before Allah, this great God, that will humble me a little bit. Also reading some of the verses in the Quran that put humbleness in your heart. There's a verse in Surah Al-Hadid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Isn't the time ready for the believers to humble their hearts to Allah? Allah's asking you this question. If you have never felt that before, Allah's telling you, when is the time? The verse in Surah Al-Hashr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. If we have revealed this Quran on top of a mountain, it will collapse, it will crumble. This Quran that we lightly look at it and take it, it could have such an effect on a huge mountain. Let us enjoy this feeling. Let us enjoy this ibadah. Let us break our ego. Let us humble ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and enjoy Ramadan with a different kind of relationship, with a different heart, a heart that's humbled towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.